There we go. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, the champions. Thank you so much to be part of this a great meeting. We are resuming to 2021, starting with amazing news. We're launching a new winery in our portfolio in California and Nevada. So first of all, I want to thank everyone to support the program and to be a part of our community. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope everybody did have a good holidays. And now we're back to reality where hopefully everybody will have a job, everybody reopening a restaurant, everybody is getting to get busy, making some money and share the passion, which is selling wine and obviously sharing the passion with our guests. So welcome 2021. Welcome to Hillside Wine and Spirit in California and Regency Wine in Nevada. Obviously in Las Vegas with Alan, our general manager, and Smitty in Reno, and us over here with a few of our obviously sales specialists with Kendall, David, myself. So here we go. Thank you so much again. We are going to do those meetings once a month. So it's going to be the first Friday of the month. I think it's a perfect timing, and I think when we're starting the month, we always like to present some new wine to you guys. So we're going to do those meetings now once a month, the first Friday of the month, still at 10:30, Breakfast of the Champion. Today, I have the privilege and amazing news that we are now the official distributor in California and Nevada for Canard Vineyard. Canard Vineyard is an institution, is an historical vineyard. They're going to talk to you about it in a minute, but I'm very, very pleased to get those wines in our portfolio. This is representation of the best made in Napa Valley. And as you all know, for us, for the past 27 years now that we're developing this portfolio, we like to represent only the best of the best. And hopefully you did, you will see what I'm talking about as you're going to test those wines this morning. So welcome to Adam Fox, the general manager of Canard. Welcome to Rich Czapleski, the owner of the estate. And also, obviously, thank you, and welcome to Brian Graham, the winemaker of this fabulous project in Calistoga Napa Valley. Here we go. So I'm going to pass on the word to Adam. He's going to introduce himself, the property, and maybe we will go from that. Of course, I am going to ask you at one point to one of you to describe the wine. Before we get to you, Adam, we have rules here. Before we start anything, everybody needs to grab the glass of wine. Please open up the Zinfandel. The Zinfandel is going to be the start. I want to do the cheering first before we talk about the beautiful project here. I have to pour myself. I'm sorry, I'm using Coravin. Please don't do it. Drink the whole balls during the day, but I have to save these for next week for sampling. So here we go. Everybody has a glass of wine on their hand. Here we go. Thank you so much again, guys. Let's make this happen. And welcome to Canard Estate in our portfolio at Regency and Hillside Wine and Spirit. Thank you, Adam, to be part of that. Good morning. How are you doing?
Cheers. Thank you, Bruno. And thank you guys for getting up and drinking so early. I know it's a hardship for most of you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing here on the estate and how we're excited we are to be into Southern California and Nevada. So this is exciting for us. So a little backstory about Canard. We've been around since 1984. First vintage was 1984, and the property is one of the oldest vineyards in Napa Valley. Our youngest vines are about, regarding Zinfandel, are about 90 years old, and the oldest are a little over 135. Everything we do is off the estate. We don't source any fruit. If we don't grow it, we don't buy it. I mean, we don't make it. So, you know, we practice a little bit unusual farming these days in Napa. Not so much unusual in France, but we dry farm the entire vineyard. So no irrigation is used on the property. We think this creates much more interesting terroir-driven wines that really have a sense of place and an identity, as opposed to so much of Napa, which is source fruit from multiple vineyards all over up and down the valley, and loses that sense of place and identity. So these are terroir-driven wines. They are focused because of our small production levels. We rather make a little bit of really good wine than a lot of mediocre wine. So the dry farming cuts into our yield substantially, which is why most people don't do it anymore. But we think it makes a far superior product. The Zin that you're tasting today is off our 90 and 100-year-old block, and then we also do a reserve Zinfandel off the 135-year-old block, which we can get to hopefully later this year. A small allocation of that. We only make about 150 cases because the yield on those 135-year-old vines is so small. That being said, you know, this is where we got our start. This is the first wine we made in 1984. And it's not your typical over-extracted, you know, jammy fruit bomb, which I think Zin has stylistically turned into over the years, as it migrated out of Napa and it went to these hotter climates where the sugars went up and the alcohols went up. So we wanted to make a balanced, structured, elegant Zinfandel, kind of harping back to, you know, the wine from the 70s and the 80s when it was considered, on par with Cabernet. We'll talk a little bit more about the history of the property and the estate going back to the 1800s and the land grant and the Donner Party. And there's a lot of history and pedigree with this property. So I want you guys to feel free to ask any questions that we can help you better understand what we're doing here. Bruno.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate that. I really do. Now, tell me good morning, Rach.
Good morning.
And welcome through this virtual Zoom testing. Thank you so much to take the time this morning to be a part of it. And welcome to my community, to my family business, which is Regency and Hillside Wine Spirit. We're very proud to represent you. We're very exciting to represent the history of Napa Valley through your glass. Rich, let us know share with us, how did you find out about this property, and what did you find in this property when you decided to purchase it?
Well, I bought it in my wife and I bought it in 1983.
Yeah.
I had actually, I was working in San Francisco, but I kept coming up to the valley. I just loved it up here. And I always wanted to do a Bordeaux style wine. So after looking around for about 2 to 3 years, we end up buying this property. We have 25 acres. It's right on the valley floor, up in the upper part of the valley, which is, you know, warmer during the day, cooler at night. So it was a perfect place to grow the Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot. And when I bought the property, we had these old Zin vines. And so, you know, I hired a vineyard manager, and for economic reasons, he said we should pull them out. And so, you know, I was listening to him. And within 2 weeks, I got 2 calls, one from Joseph Phelps and the other one was Robert Mondavi. And they said, see, you bought the old Tucker place. What are you going to do with the Zin vines? And I told him, you know, the vineyard manager said we should pull them out for economic reasons. And he said, yeah, he says, I understand that. He said, but you know, we made award-winning wine off of that property, Zinfandel. And he says, it's history of the valley. So that was 37 years ago. We still haven't pulled them out.
Nice. Did you fire the property manager, or you kept the same guy?
No, he kind of, he stayed on for a couple of years and then he left.
You didn't have the vision for Zinfandel. I have to be honest with you. I'm from Bordeaux, and Zinfandel never been something that obviously I grew up with. So when I came to California, people were telling me about Zinfandel, and I start, you know, what I do, testing wine, and Zinfandel never been a grape that was really appealed to my palate. And then I discovered a few zines. One of the first zines that we get on our portfolio was Chateau Potel with Jean-Noël Fourmont, because he convinced me that making zine is a state of the art. You have to be very patient. It doesn't ripe evenly. You have to go and pick it up little by little if you want something very appealing in the glass. And it really did show very, very much. And that was one of my first Zinfandel in the portfolio. You are the second Zinfandel in my portfolio, because when I test your Zinfandel, I felt that was balanced, and I felt that I was well, the acidity was there, it was not overripe, and it looks like done in a proper way. But maybe we're going to ask your winemaker about the approach of winemaking, and especially on the Zinfandel. I want to thank you again, Rach, to be a part of it. And through the event, I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. And don't hesitate to share some great history about the property and all that later on through the events. It would be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Obviously, a welcome as well to the winemaker Brian Graham. Can you hear us, Brian? Are you there? Are you muting?
Absolutely, yeah, I can hear just fine.
Perfect, superb. So tell me about the way that you obviously love to find out a little bit more about your background and how did you meet with this beautiful property, and then we will talk about philosophy of winemaking and all that. But just if you don't mind, just give us maybe a little background.
Sure. Went to school for architecture, Texas Tech University, and about 3 years through school, I decided I wanted to get in the wine business, like everyone does, right? I was selling wine. I was selling wines and brokering wines, and as sort of a part-time job while I was going to school. And my dad and I, we drank wine together growing up. It was a really important part of it. But 3 years into architecture school, I decided I want to get in the wine business. So I sold wine, started retail, went into wholesale, then went into national distribution with a small little company called International Gourmet in the early 90s. And they went out of business. We had Aubryon and Chateau Margaux and Chateau Roquefort. It was but it was right about the time when Americans decided they didn't like the name Freedom. They didn't like French fries, and everyone hated each other. And do you remember Freedom Fries?
Right? Oh, yeah, believe me, with the French accent I have.
Well, we went out of business because we couldn't sell the French wines, and that's what I loved. I loved a big history buff, so I was always affinity guided towards Bordeaux. So when they went out of business, I just decided that I would pick up everything and I would move to France to learn how to make wine. I really didn't sort of have an affinity for UC Davis style wines, that bigger, fleshier style. I like the softer, fatter, richer wines. So I went to Bordeaux. I worked for a couple of really beautiful chateaus, and they convinced me to go get my degree in enology at the University of Bordeaux. And so I finished my degree there. And right about the time I finished, my dad got sick. So I came back to Texas. And while I was in Texas, I got an opportunity to go to, in 1997, I got an opportunity to go to Maryville. And Bob Levy was still the winemaker. Harlan was still made there. So I had the ability to, deep dive right away, transition from Bordeaux into these world-class California wines that I felt like sort of straddled the fence, if you will, between that bright, fleshy, fruity style and that elegant finish and mouthfeel. So yeah, been in Napa since '97. And I met Rich. Funny story. I was making my own wines for a while, and I met Rich and his wife Carolyn at the Napa Valley Wine Auction 2 years in a row, and we just started talking. And one of the conversations talked about this really old Zin, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to come see that. I want to buy some of this fruit. He's like, no. And so anyway, long story short, in '97, I came on board to help him with some stuff, and we've been together ever since.
Wow, that's a great story. And what do you think then the French winemaking did bring over to your style and your philosophy of winemaking when you came over to California after that? What do you think it did bring over to you?
Well, I had this theory of what I thought winemaking in Bordeaux was before I got there. And then while I was there, and I trained there, it was sort of, reiterated a lot of let's call it an old world style more than French, right?
Yeah, old side.
I would just call it a patience. I'd call it it's not a fix it mentality. It's not about, it's not about looking at numbers and immediately adjusting acid. It's about patience and time and walking the vineyards. And, a lot of things, some of them are cliche now because everybody says it, but really it's about patience and just getting a gut feel for things. Not manipulating with tons of tannin and changing acid. And I just want to watch the wines evolve, what Mother Nature gave us to work with these beautiful vineyards. And, Adam sort of directs me to always do better. And so we're always sort of just looking for things we can do in the vineyard and stuff in the winery. So we adjust cold soaks when needed and extended maceration when needed. And just a little bit of a minimalist approach, but just steering and guiding this world-class fruit into the best wines we can make.
Nice. Then obviously in Bordeaux, you didn't find any Zinfandel, and then you meet with the Zinfandel in California. So what is your approach with this grape? Obviously, old vine Zinfandel. What is your approach? What is your sensibility regarding the grapes, the vine, and when to harvest and all the good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first started working with it, I, like everyone, said, well, what's my model going to be? I've never worked with a Zinfandel before. And I liked some Primitivos out of Italy. I knew some sort of styles I liked out of that, but, I had to have a model. So I went with the Ridge model, right? I mean, long time barrel aging, sort of minimalist approach. But for me, a little too much pyrazine is a little bit too green. And so I thought at the time I wanted to make more California style Zinfandel. And it became quite clear after a couple of years that these vines are old and mature, and the berries are smaller than normal. The clusters are smaller than normal. There's more skin to juice ratio, tannin involved. So I sort of took an approach of making it more like if it was a Bordeaux grape. It just seemed to me that it wasn't going to be that fat, fleshy bubblegum style. And so I took an approach that I wanted to make it sort of stylistically that it was a Bordeaux grape, a fruitier Bordeaux grape, and then I was going to sort of steer it in that direction. And over all these years, we've just sort of honed in on a pretty cool style, and it works really well for us.
Nice.
Yeah, I treat it more like I would on this particular vineyard. I treat it more like a Bordeaux sort of theory than I do a California hot and heavy, over extracted, over ripe. Water it back down with water to get the alcohol adjusted. I mean, all of those things that you normally do with these really big New World style wines. We do the polar opposite of that, actually.
Okay. Now let's start with harvest. When do you pick those Zinfandel usually? Which breaks, or what is your target here?
What I love about this vineyard is it is clockwork. It's been in the ground so long. It ripens so evenly almost every year. I can tell you with pretty much certainty that we will start picking within 10 or 12 days of it. So, that 5th through 12th area of September, it comes off. We do pick it in blocks.
Okay.
There's 3 sections of this vineyard, but as we go along, there's like 5 microclimates. So we do have the ability to pull fruit in different places at different times. For example, the top of the block, which is the oldest part of the vineyard, actually comes off one of the first things. Because the berries are so small, it's a little bit warmer up there and so it comes off a little bit sooner. And we pick it just when it's ready. Like you said early on, there's a lot of uneven ripeningness. So you have.
Do you see the map right here?
For sure. So there's a big road to your right at the top of that screen. That's the Silver Oak Trail. That top sort of triangle part of that top piece of that vineyard is the oldest part of the vineyard. And that, the very, very tip top, it's almost just that little bitty top triangle. That comes off some of the earliest. Yeah. And then it sort of trickles back down that hill. And there's 5 blocks in there, but that middle of that top and middle block is the sweet spot. That's where this particular wine came from.
Okay.
That sort of 100-year-old up to sort of that area right in there. that in 97, sorry, 17, that's exactly where this came from. It just has great balance. It straddles the fence between red and black fruit, has this really beautiful plum element to it. And it just has this really beautiful finish. So, I love that area of the vineyard for the estate. The top part of that block is really black dominant, and that's really mostly where the reserve comes from.
Got it. Now, there's no rootstock on this Zinfandel.
It is own rooted, most of it, yes.
Okay, so no disease or anything like that. I mean, you don't have to deal with this too often during the year. I mean, it's obviously a very old vine. I'm sure the production level is very little by the plant because it's so old.
Yeah, I mean, like Rich mentioned in the beginning, the first thing vineyard manager said, from an economies of scale, pull that out, right? I mean, you're not going to make any money, but that wasn't the passion that Rich had and the vision he had, and we're so thankful he didn't, because it's clearly it's institution here in Napa. I mean, you drive up and down the valley all day long, and history is not. It's few and far between now, and to see something like this is pretty special, and be able to walk it every week is a blessing.
What is the composition of the soil here? Because I'm trying to understand why and how this Zinfandel is so happy in this land. So
yeah, we actually have about 4 soils. They're alluvial fans throughout the vineyard. There's a river, an ancient river bottom that drops out of the top corner and comes and sort of rests into this Zinfandel. And what makes this Zinfandel really just keep going is it's not river bottom. It has a lot of sand mixed into it, so it stays fairly dry. So it's got this sandy loam, a little bit of alluvial fan. There's some rock that sort of drops down about 18 to 24 inches, well drained, and it works. It's beautiful.
Nice. So now, what is the philosophy? So you told me that you're dealing with these Zinfandel pretty much like a Bordeaux grape. So you obviously tell us a little bit more details about vinification.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I want the aromatics are really important on this wine. So I want to be very gentle with it. So I'll let the wines rest fairly cold. I want to make sure that the native yeast doesn't kick off until I'm sort of ready. So I'll get that 2 to 5 day. It just depends on the year. In the colder years, you can do a little bit more cold soak. In the hotter years, you really don't want to macerate too long. You'll start getting a little bit overripe sort of flavor profiles. So I think this is probably 2 to 3 days on average.
But you steam everything. So did you keep the?
Yeah, sorry. So we not only destem, I make sure that the berries are whole berries.
Okay.
When I pick, because I don't want carbonic maceration per se, the explosion of fruit, but I want that berry to be fully intact, so that there's not a lot of oxidation on the wine early on, to keep that freshness in the palate. So we actually sort this also. So we do a double sorting on it, just to pull anything out, make sure there's no leaves, and just make sure that the fruit that we actually get in the tank is as close to perfect as possible. Obviously, you do want some of that uneven ripening in there. Zinfandel by nature can be low acid. And so having actually some of those unripened berries, or perfectly ripened berries, that are more in the 22, 21, 23 bricks area, that ends up actually helping us keep that really high natural acidity without having to go too far. So we'll destem whole berry. We'll sort it whole cluster. We'll destem whole berry. It'll go across another table. We'll pull out any remaining stuff that isn't. We call it MOG, material other than grapes, and then it'll just it gets gravity dumped into tank, and we let it rest. I will raise the temperature on day 2 or 3 or whatever day I sort of am smelling what I like, and I will let it kick off native. I like to let the beginning of these fermentations go native, and then just sort of stretch the envelope a little bit. And as soon as it starts to get a little bit of that funk from that native yeast, I'll hit it with commercial yeast that I like. And that will really just help push and propel that fermentation a little bit faster to finish. so that it keeps that bright, fleshy, fruity style.
Nice. Aging process?
So do a little extended maceration, but we'll do several cuts at the press. It's just not turn the press on and let it rip. I do several cuts, and the first two cuts go straight to barrel, and then the last press goes into a tank, and I let it settle out. But we'll keep all three components separate for probably around 6 to 9 months. I don't rack very often. That's sort of part of the old world style. We don't hardly touch these wines except for just topping and just letting them rest. And then we'll come in and we'll taste through the wines and make sure that all the components and all the different barrels fit. And then we'll do that first racking. But to answer your question, somewhere between 18 and 22 months. It just depends on the wine and the vintage and the year. But yeah,
French oak?
Sort of 18, 22 months.
French oak?
Always.
I'm just asking. Some people love to use Hungarian oak on their Zinfandel.
Always. For my style, I have played around with some of the nicer Hungarian barrels, and I do like a little bit of that toasted coconut that it can bring into it. But for Canard specifically, the tighter grain Taransos and Darnajous and Fouquets and a little bit of Francois Frere here and there, those barrels, I want voluptuousness in the mid palate on these wines. I want these wines to be super soft and creamy, but I want them to have this voluptuousness. And so, yeah, I stick with the French oak.
Good. That's good. That's good. That's your philosophy. That's great. Now, what is the total production? Maybe Adam, what was the production of this Zinfandel today?
So we always hover around 450, can get up to about 600 cases on a bumper crop year. But the yield on these grapes is so low. We're lucky if we get 2 tons an acre, which goes back to the financial viability of this. So everybody in Napa, maybe not everybody, but the valley has become very corporate, and it's become about profit driven wines, and I think it's a real testament to Rich to say, you know what, this is history of the valley, and let's keep that history and not just look at the bottom line, because once you pull out 135-year-old grapes, you never get them back in your lifetime or even your kid's lifetime. So it's a special vineyard, and we make 4 to 6 barrels of reserves in. I mean, there's 2 acres, and we're getting 6 barrels off of 2 acres on the valley floor of Napa. We replant that with cab and sell it like we do a little bit of cab to Farniente and Nickel, and it's incredibly profitable. Or we can make 150 cases of 135-year-old Zinfandel. So it's a philosophy. It's like, it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about having something really special and taking care of it and curating it.
That's great. That's great. I obviously, it's in our portfolio, and we picked those wines last year where we were testing the wine and developing and thinking about how to bring this one in the portfolio. But I'm going to take someone on the screen here, or someone can tell me if he's ready to describe this Zinfandel for us. Is anybody want to take the lead on that? That can be great. I'm putting my full screen. This way I can see way more people. I want to see the excitement about who's going to take the lead. It's always a lady first. So maybe a lady want to take over. Come on, guys. I don't see anybody waving. I'm going to pick. You know me. I'm ready. Karen is always up to it. Karen Vino 100 in Reno. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm well. I'm back from Cabo San Lucas and back to work. Really excited to be back to work. We had a wonderful trip, and it was great to get away. Great to come home.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
This wine is beautiful. So first of all, the nose is over the top. I mean, holy cow, you smell this wine and it jumps out of the glass, right, full pop, and you just can't wait to taste it. The finish on this wine is so long and amazing, I can't even get over it. But on the palate, I'm getting really beautiful strawberry, a little hint of rhubarb, but it's integrated because I don't particularly care for rhubarb, but I love this wine. I'm getting really, really nice spices. I get a little bit of sage. There's those really beautiful savory notes in this wine. I love this. What's the price point on this, Bruno?
We're not going to talk about prices yet, Karen.
Okay, no spoilers, right?
This is at the end of the meeting. We'll stop recording and you will have the advantage to, for a very short period of time.
Oh, that's right. I forgot the recording.
We're not talking about prices right now, but thank you so much, Karen. And yes, Mexico, Baja California, it's just a beautiful place to recharge battery.
So I would say one of my favorite things about this wine is that it makes you salivate. It hits the back of your tongue and you get this wonderful salivation, and that it makes it so juicy without being overripe, ripe, or mega fruit forward at all. But this is a world-class wine. I love it. And you know what? So last night we dipped into the red blend. I poured it for a couple of customers, knowing that we would taste it today, and that I would need a little left over. And they went crazy over it. They loved it. So you're getting really good feedback. And I'm going to save the rest of this one and taste my other customers.
You got it, Karen. Thank you so much again. Appreciate that. I know
everybody.
that most of you did receive some cheese along with your wine. Thanks to Cheese Store in Las Vegas. Thanks to Pusta in Los Angeles. I get one in mute, please. One is, hold on. Sound system. Here we go. Thank you. Let's talk about the cheese pairing. What was the cheese that was supposed to be with the Zinfandel?
Hey guys, so the cheese.
Hello, Diane.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here again.
Hi, thanks for having me again, y'all. So this one was kind of a pairing we just did on the fly the other day. I chose the smoke and goat cheese for this one. Zinfandels for me, I get a lot of like ripe fruit, some baking spice. Sometimes I get a little bit of like smokiness there. And I wanted to play with those fruity notes. I really wanted to play with some of the smokiness that sometimes can be classically represented in a Zinfandel. And I wanted to go something that's a little obscure in the cheese world. I don't know if any of you have heard of this cheese before, but this is Smoke and Goat from Matica. It's an exclusive cheese from the Canary Islands in Spain. So this one is only aged about 15 days, semi-soft cheese, and then naturally smoked at about a week of age over some beechwood. The thing that's really nice about this cheese specifically is that the breed of goats that are used have an ideal milk composition for cheese making. So you get a really lovely flavor profile here, a lovely texture that sort of saturates the palate. And for me, with like something heavy like this, that's really just a very strong presence of wine, I wanted something that would really saturate the palate and allow for a nice delivery vehicle for the flavors to sort of integrate and play nicely together. You'll notice that some of the smokiness of the cheese comes forward with a little bit more of like a highlight of baking spice coming through in the wine as a result of that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Diane, for this pairing. Let's talk about, we're going to do the transition with you. We're going to go to the second wine, which is going to be the Bordeaux blend. Cabernet base. Which cheese did you pick for this second wine for us, Diane? Sorry.
Sorry, we're going into cheese first. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I was trying to change the brew a little bit.
Sure, I'd already muted myself. I was like, okay, I'm done. Good. So the second cheese is Ossau Arati. So Ossau Arati is a classic Pyrenees sheep's milk cheese that blends sort of two areas of France together. It is an unpasteurized cheese, uncooked and pressed. So it's going to be very representative of terroir, noticeably kind of savory, buttery, depending on the milk that we're getting. You can get grassy notes that are representative of what the girls are eating when they're out to pasture, or you can get some sort of like dried hay notes. We're eating a winter milk version today because you can actually tell that there's like some grain, some hay, but you still get a nice representative sort of savory flavor profile from the sheep milk. Lovely buttery, nutty notes here too, representative of sheep milk as well.
Fantastic, Diane. So you're located in Las Vegas, correct? Can you tell us your location for everyone?
Yeah, sure. I own Valley Cheese and Wine here in Henderson. So we are on 1570 West Horizon Ridge. So just Horizon Ridge between like Stephanie and in the McDonald Ranch area. It's the oldest cheese shop in Las Vegas. And we just took ownership in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you, do you do any room delivery to the hotels?
I mean, now I do.
No, I think our winemakers in Las Vegas on one of the hotels in the lockdown. So maybe Brian want to get some of the cheese delivered to him in the room.
Brian, I'm happy to drop some cheese at your door.
There we go. See?
I'll do that. That's
here we go.
When we're done recording,
I gotta make sure my kid doesn't eat it all.
I'll bring some kid-friendly ones for him too, or them too. Yeah, once we're done, I can exchange information with you, and I'll get you some cheese.
Yeah, putting on the chat box. This way, everybody will see it, and we want to be sure that we advertise your business as you are a great supporter of what we're doing on the Zoom trade testing every month now. We also thank you again, Diane. We also have the participation in Los Angeles by Custa. Cheese Store is a little local cheese and wine shop next to my home in Venice, California. Custa also did the donation for the same cheese that you're getting next to your testing, guys. Thank you so much. So the transition was done by Diane. Again, thank you. Maybe Adam, tell us a little bit more about the different level of the different cuvées that we have in the portfolio. And maybe tell us the next one. Introduce the next one to us, please. And everybody has a time to change wine, as you can imagine, and go to the Throwback 2016 Cuvée Bordeaux blend, 2016.
So
go ahead.
Throwback is one of 3 proprietary blends we make. You know, as Brian mentioned, he did all his training in Bordeaux, and I think he also spent a little time in Burgundy. So, you know, we wanted to pay homage to his time there by making something kind of very right bank focused and very left bank focused. And then, so Throwback is obviously our homage to the left bank. It's a throwback to old Napa Valley. You know, over the years, that pendulum swing in style has gotten to be these big, you know, what I think are slightly overdone wines. And, you know, it's about chasing scores and making wines to the palate of certain reviewers. And the wines have just gotten bigger and bigger, and to the point where they just lost their elegance and their you know, restraint. So this, you know, is made more in the vein of an old world wine, a throwback to what Napa was like in the 70s. When Bordeaux influence was a little bit more, you know, dominant. Mostly cab. All of our 3 Bordeaux blends are dominant enough that you can put this on the wine list or on the shelf as a cab or as a red blend. So it gives you that flexibility, because we're always in that high 80 to low 90% of the dominant grape. So it's you can direct that cab drinker to this wine, but you could also you know, direct that red blend drinker, because it does have a little bit of Merlot in it and a little bit of Cab Franc. That's the idea, is to you know, use the other grapes as kind of the supporting cast. So you'll get all the cab qualities, but that softness comes from that touch of Merlot, and that little finesse comes from that hint of Cab Franc. On the flip side, which we will release later this year, is the Rescuer, which is our right bank Bordeaux style wine, and that favors Merlot from the 2.5 acres of Merlot that we have on the property. So we're kind of paying homage to left and right bank with those 2. And then the third in the series is Adam's blend, and that favors Cab Franc. That's about 91% Cab Franc. And all these will be available down the road, but right now we just wanted to focus on Throwback, and it's kind of, you know, cab forwardness.
Great. So for just to recap for everybody listening to us, we're going to call that the Zin Estate. That's what we have in stock right now. We will have the Cabernet Estate if you're only looking for a Cabernet wine with the Cabernet names on the label. And then we go to the Reserve Cuvee, which we just explained to you. There's 3 different Cuvées made by Adam, of course. And one of them that we pick for this first initial launching is to get to the Throwback to the Table. It's my personal favor. I think it's because the Cabernet is dominant, but we're going to ask maybe Brian to tell us a little bit more about the vinification of this wine. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so we took the 3 components in the vineyard, the Cab, the Merlot, and the Cab Franc, and then, like everyone said already, pay homage to, Fronsac and Palmerol and Margaux area, and that's sort of the stylistic idea behind the 3 blends. Like Adam said, they're all 89 to 93% varietally correct most of the time. Some years even more varietally correct. The idea is to balance out the dominant varietal in each wine and sort of accent and build on it, just like you would in Bordeaux. In some years, that's why they have 5 different, or even 5 different grapes, right? I mean, you find the flaws in your predominant wine, and you sort of build this beautiful model and help that Cab or that Merlot or that Cab Franc sort of accentuate. So we use Merlot in this particular wine to fill out the mid palate a little bit, round it out a little bit. Cab, especially in California, has a big hole in the middle of it. Some of the times it's really big on the front and really big on the finish. So definitely want to put just a hint of Merlot in there. And then we have the Cab Franc to give it that beautiful rose petal nose and that fragrance on the front of it that Cab Franc's known for in the Bordeaux world. And so that's what we're doing. We vinify them all 3 separately because originally they're going to their other homes, right? They're going to Throwback, they're going to Rescuer, and they're going to Adam's Blend. And I will start, I build these wines a little differently. I rack them again at that sort of 6 to 9 to 12 month range. And then I'll slowly start integrating in bits and pieces of the other 2 components just to start building them up. I've never been a fan of that final blend right before bottling, because I don't believe you can really truthfully find out what that wine's going to evolve into if you're just sort of Castigron, if you're just throwing it all together there at the very, very end. And so we build these wines. And so by the time we get to that last racking before bottling, these wines are probably, 98, 97% done. And you're just sort of tweaking there at the very end just to make sure the wine is sort of going the direction that you want, and the aging on the wine, you haven't found any holes, right? When I was at Chateau Roquefort in the Ultra de Mer, he taught me why they start blending so early, because he was like, if I threw all this Merlot in at the very end, he said, go taste this barrel. And we tasted these barrels, and he was saying, if I would have put this barrel in at the very end, I would have never known that specific plot was going to go flat this year. So I would have been adding flat wine or muted wine to this blend at the last minute. And so that's sort of the evolution. Same sort of approach when it comes to crush, hand harvest. We night harvest most of this, and double distill, double sort, whole berry,
handpicked night harvest,
handpicked. Yeah, especially up in the Calistoga area. If you start at 8
can be
o'clock,
hot.
you're going to be picking hot fruit by 10 or 30 or 11. So yeah. I want them in and crushed and resting in the tank at close to the temperature I want to cold soak as possible. So we'll bring them into the winery. I do crush the cab a little bit more than I would say a Zinfandel. I want a little bit of that tannin extraction sort of early on in the cold soak. And then after 2, 3, 4, 5 days, depending upon, vintage year, I think this one was 3 days. It goes into a native bloom, and then a mildly warm fermentation. You hear a lot of guys, winemakers in the valley, and they're doing a lot of hot ferments. Those hotter ferments are going to extract riper flavors, and we don't need that up at Calistoga. And especially, one thing we haven't talked about is this entire vineyard is dry farmed. So we already have this beautiful, extremely small, very tight cluster, very small clustered fruit. So if we just exacerbate that, so I try and keep my fermentations for fermentation in that 86 to 88 range at the peak. And then just sail them down. I like to slow down the fermentation on the Cabernet specifically, and let it draw out. So we'll get, 24, 28 days on the skins just to really let it macerate. And then I do, sometimes I do basket press on this wine just because I want to minimize the harsh tannin. Some years I'll use a bladder press, just depends. I think the 16, it was one of the best vintages, most even vintages ever. And I think I bladder pressed this and just did a bunch of press cuts, kept it all separate.
It's so well integrated. I mean, it's just brilliant, and you have the layers, the texture. But what do I know? I'm going to ask actually one of my guests to tell me what they think about this wine. Here we go. So obviously, again, I really want to share that with you guys. So can someone? Yes, Kat, hello. How you doing? Nice background. It looks like the Zinfandel vine.
I tried to rock a little love. Hi, everybody. Lots of love to everybody out there. Thanks for having us again.
Hello.
This wine, the minute you pick it up, I didn't know how much Cab Franc was in there, but it seemed like there was some because it was just very perfumed with that violet sort of essence that I enjoy. And, we talked about, or you guys talked about a throwback to the 70s. And I was thinking okay, I'm trying to think of songs that might have been out in the 70s, but it's kind of like prominence of Shake That Booty kind of came into my head. So it's playing in my head, and it's kind of like everything is dancing on the palate in such a fun, light way that nothing weighs you down. All of the varieties in here have a part, and they definitely are settled where they need to be, and they're structured, but it's like this fun little dance in my mouth. And it's interesting because I didn't have the opportunity, and I still haven't yet, to try a lot of wines from back in the day, but hearing people talk about them and reading about them, this seems to be prominence of that time. And the fruits still are fresh and vibrant. And they're just, like I said, they're just dancing on the mouth. So I appreciated it greatly. And the integration of tannins and any oak tannins, it's so gentle, yet it definitely, like I said, everything has its place and its structure, but it's just a fun, serious at the same time wine, if that makes any sense. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate that. The description is always great with you. And thank you to be part of the community again. Somebody was telling me about the cheese pairing. Do you think it was a good cheese pairing as well with this second wine? Okay.
Well, I mean, I think so, but I did the pairing, so.
We do have a chef online. Many of you are chef as well, but I'm going to ask Steve Benjamin, my dear friend chef at the Bordeaux Pastoria, what did you think about those wines? And on your menu, as I know you have a new menu going out, what will be your choice to pair with this wine?
Hello, everyone.
Eyes here.
Good morning. So really love both wines. So I will start with the Zinfandel, and I'm going to try to be short. For the first one, Zinfandel. So first, I apologize, but when I received the cheese, I ate it right away before to open the wine. So sorry, I'm French. So this is what's happened with French people. Yeah. So I cannot tell about the pairing between the cheese and the wine, but I'm pretty sure it's good. My first thought of the Zinfandel, this can go with a lot of things. I will say I will see that with a nice Parmentier, like a duck confit Parmentier, something very nice, not too heavy. Nice pâté en croûte, I love to do that kind of thing with some duck, venison, pistachio things with a lot of flavors with a gelée on it as well. I think I heard about the rhubarb flavor on it as well. I will see some. I love to pair a lot of red wine with some foie gras, so I will see a nice seared foie gras with some rhubarb and hibiscus things. I think it will go very well with it. Berries as well. On cheese, on my side, I would prefer like a mimolette, something a little dry, and it's gonna pair very well with that. Lentil with sage. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with this one. With actually the another one, more heavier, I love to do that kind of thing, and right now, especially a beef chic bourguignon, and I will do something like that with it, with a nice mashed potatoes.
Well, we're all coming in 5 minutes. Be ready for a long table.
I'm ready. I'm already open. The Tree restaurant is already open since 1 week, so we're ready to go.
That's good, Chef. I really appreciate that. We're so happy to see our chef, our community, our restaurant, hotels reopening step by step. And don't forget that you need a lot of wine to comply in your beautiful cuisine, Chef. So keep drinking good wine.
Sorry, I will not forget that. I love wine. Thank you for having me.
Everybody will be in Los Angeles. Go to visit Steve Benjamin at the Waldorf Astoria at Jean-Georges. He will be more than happy to talk to you about his passion. The food pairing is always a thing that we do together. And hopefully we'll have Canard wine soon at the Waldorf Astoria. Thank you, Chef.
We do. Hi, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Adam, I am going to put you back again. Can you, as wrap it up, the story of the vineyard, and we tested those beautiful wine together. Can you just tell us a statement where you're going with this property? What is the vision? Maybe the new programs coming up. I know you have a little announcement about something you done after the fire. Of course, everybody is aware about this disaster. I mean, 2020 was not easy on anyone, especially for the people in Napa in this industry going vine and see some of those vines going on fire. So can you tell us a little bit more about your vision, where we're going, which program, and how you get involved with this community up there?
Absolutely. I think one thing, that sets us apart from a lot of the vineyards in Napa is, we want to make food wines. We've always been about 90% restaurant only as far as our distribution. We have not done a lot of retail. Because we just want something to come out of the cellar and be drinking beautifully with the food you pair at restaurants. Because of our small production, I mean, everything is estate, and because of that, we're pretty limited. But what you also get is, that handcrafted quality. We're not making 500,000 cases of something. We're making 200, 300, 400 cases of things. So Brian's able to finesse and make the wines, pick the grapes on a small scale, multiple picks, press the wines on small pressings, and I think it translates because imagine the chef making a dinner for 4 or having to do a banquet for 400. You can't make the same food, and we kind of align ourselves with making dinner for 4 as far as our production level and scale. So we're going to continue to just do terroir driven, single vineyard wines that always over deliver on the price. I mean, our wines are incredibly affordable for what they are. You can't find a single vineyard all estate wine of this quality in Napa Valley. But we're able to do it because there's just 3 of us. It's Rich, myself, and Brian. So we put it all in the bottle, and not in advertising or in gimmicks or and we are just passionate wine people. That being said, we lost our entire 2020 vintage in the glass fire. We make our wine about 200 yards away from the property at what used to be Cuvee Winery. It's now called Fairwinds. So it's real close by without actually putting an industrial complex on the vineyard. And it burned down, taking our entire 2020 vintage with it. So one of the things that we make is a rosé every spring. Normally it's called Coucher du Soleil, which means sunset, because it's this beautiful Provence style rosé made from Cab Franc, Zinfandel, and Merlot. But since that burned up in the fire, Brian quickly ran down to Paso and picked up some high altitude Grenache and brought it up to a winery in Sonoma. So you got Paso grapes fermented in Sonoma with a Napa winemaker. So kind of across the board, a unity of regions to produce this little bad boy. I don't know if you guys can see the label very well, but what I wanted to do is create this silkscreen three-color image of, it's not a phoenix rising, but in our case, a duck, because that's essentially what's happened. So since, the last 3 years we've been fighting fires here, we wanted to tell a story about this wine. We wanted to say that, of the years of the farmers and the winemakers and the people that have been affected by this industry, that the resolve and the fortitude that we're pressing on. So we've made this wine basically out of the ashes. And so you guys are going to get a small allocation of this. It's a limited production, but it's terrific, and it just really tells a story. And part of the proceeds are going to the Napa Valley Disaster Relief Fund. So it's also a bit of a donation. So those people that want to somehow support what we've been doing, they'll be able to do that through buying this bottle.
That sounds great. So that obviously the only one you don't producing from the estate, but you explain why, the reason. I'm so glad that the vineyard didn't get affected by the fire. It looks like you saved pretty much the whole vineyard. The one that you actually lost was the production of the 2020, which was already in a bottle, which was already in the warehouse. So,
well, it was across the street, and it was half of it was in tank still. Some of it was pressed out down to barrel, and it was all in the middle of fermentation. So the fire literally came right up to the edge of the vines. But we had someone on the property that was literally driving around on an ATV with a 5-gallon bucket of water, putting out these spot fires just to keep it from coming into the vineyard. So, yes, we lost the vintage, but I gotta say, if you're going to lose a vintage, 2020 was a good one to lose, because who the hell wants to be reminded of that? There's always a bright side, but we will press on because the vineyard is intact, and we'll continue to make these small production terroir-driven wines.
Appreciate that.
I had a belly laugh on that one. That was funny.
Yeah. I just want to remind people that are exceptional to have you in our portfolio, because obviously you are not doing distribution in California for all these years. I guess you have already enough people on your membership, and we want to thank you to give us access to those wines, to give access to my sommelier, my restaurant, my hotel, our industry, to have those wines, those magnificent wines, I believe, in their portfolio, in their wine list. So thank you again for the support, guys. Thank you to be part of this beautiful meeting this morning. I really hope that you enjoy it, and we'll see you soon to do more of those. But for right now, I want to thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep your heads up. We're 2021, so you can expect us to put your wine in the right place in those cities. And thank you again to you, Rach, to support the program, Adam, to work with us and to be supporting the program. And of course, winemaker Brian Graham to keep doing those great wine and keep pushing for the quality, please. Thank you very much to everyone. I'm going to stop the recording as it was a beautiful time. If you do have a question, again, we have the chat box on the side, but I want to thank the